Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to day two of the Carnegie Connection Conference. It's great to have you all here. I am joined by two of our friends from LinkedIn, Tim McCarthy, Senior Account Executive, and Andy Pondillo, Senior Content Solutions Consultant. They're our friends from LinkedIn, so it's going to be a great 45 minutes or so of information. There'll be time for Q&A. But there's a few things I just want to make sure everybody hears. Some of you who've been a part of these sessions over the last 2 days, you probably heard this, but got to let everybody know. The sessions will be recorded, and we're providing links to the recordings to all attendees by the end of this week. All the session attendees, you are on mute and off camera. While the video streaming window you're currently viewing offers both Whova and Zoom functionality for chats and Q&A, we just ask that you please use the Zoom chat and Q&A feature if you've got questions. This certainly allows our speakers and support teams to more efficiently respond to your questions. And at the end of the session, we'll be able to answer as many as the time allows. As always, if you have any questions or need help, you can email us at conferences, that's with an S, at carnegiehighered.com, or message us in the Whova app using the Ask Organizers Anything section of the community board. And we absolutely encourage everyone to be social during these sessions. So use hashtag the connection and tag us at Carnegie HQ for any posts that you share about today's session. So with that, I'm super excited to turn it over to our friends Tim and Andy from LinkedIn. All yours, fellas.
All righty. Well, hello, everyone. We'll kick it off for today. And a big thank you for having us. My name, Andy Pondillo, Senior Content Solutions Consultant. Railed that off really nicely. It took me about 6 months after starting to say that title just as fluidly as I did today. And what does that mean? I handle a little bit of everything from messaging, creative direction, overall brand to demand type strategy in your EDU space. So I see things from a macro lens, try to stay ahead of those trends, and we bring it towards a one-to-one, or get you on a one-to-one basis for consulting that we do from our team to try to up-level, whether it be lead gen, clicks, conversions, enrollments, and everything in between, trying to find that right strategy for you. Today, we'll be talking from that macro lens, some of the things I'm seeing right now that are trendy on LinkedIn, giving you some actionable steps to take it to the next level. And introducing Tim now, someone I've worked with both as a former LinkedIn customer and now LinkedIn colleague for several years. This is kind of like, I would say, the metaverse coming together, Tim, and excited to combine forces today to take you through all of what EDU has to offer on LinkedIn.
Worlds colliding, yes. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. I'm Tim McCarthy. I'm a senior account executive on the education team here at LinkedIn. I'm coming up on 14 years at LinkedIn, actually, this coming month. And about probably half of that, my team has been the team that's been supporting Carnegie across everything they do on the platform. So it's a pleasure to be here. I have to thank our friends at Carnegie for everything they do and for having us here today. It's really a pleasure, and thank you all for being here. Hopefully, this is going to be a good use of your time. You're going to get some, as Andy said, some trends, some things that we're seeing kind of on the front lines of this that we think are going to be important to share with you today. So. The theme of today is going to be institutional storytelling. So, kind of what does that mean? As the name implies, I think we're seeing a bit of a shift in terms of higher education marketing from more discrete moments of engagement to really trying to tell a more complete and unique story. So, before we get into this, and I can tell you a little bit about what this means as far from our perspective. I wanted to share kind of two trends that we've been seeing over the last year or so that I think frame this conversation nicely. One of those themes is there seems to us to be kind of a growing awareness that a single point of engagement, whether we're talking about prospects that we're trying to enroll or perhaps workplace partnerships that we're trying to get in place, that having a single point of engagement is difficult from a marketing perspective. It's difficult to get information across. It's difficult to really capture true intent. That looking at that as a moment in time is probably not the most effective thing for our marketing strategy. So anybody on this call, if you're familiar with LinkedIn from a marketing perspective, you're probably familiar with it in large part through the lens of enrollment marketing. And that's something that, we do all day long and will continue to do. But I think that some of those things like awareness, consideration, what we do with our leads in terms of nurturing them, whatever the objective, whatever the communication that we're having, that being able to tell the story is a powerful thing. We talk all day long with marketers who are kind of trying to position their MBA as something that's really unique and valuable and interesting. That's really difficult to do in a single point of interaction, talking, focused solely on enrollment. You have a more unique story to tell with some of the assets you already have available. So a lot of that is going to be the conversation today. But the other trend I wanted to share upfront is that we are seeing a lot more emphasis and a lot more willingness and appetite for individual thought leadership on the platform. And that is across all industries. And certainly from a platform perspective, we're trying to encourage that individual thought leadership, both to kind of leverage the platform for one's own professional growth and development and visibility, but also to help tell that institutional story. So I think those two trends in terms of looking at marketing from a more holistic point of view, as well as lifting those individual voices that we have that can contribute to those goals and getting them more visibility and being seen as well. So in terms of the institutional story, this is kind of roughly how we look at it in terms of the different buckets, the different things that you may have to communicate as an institution to succeed in the various goals that you have across these. So again, enrollment marketing, what we typically have talked about day to day from a marketing perspective in higher education is this left-hand kind of pillar, B2C, B2B. For higher education, we're an institution with a good reputation. We've got excellent faculty. We've got a portfolio of cutting edge opportunities for you. We're the right school. You should enroll or purchase or register, whatever that is. So again, that's, our bread and butter as far as this stuff goes. That won't change. But we also have these other areas that I think are coming into more focus as well. So the corporate side, workforce learning is obviously a huge thing at the moment. And we're definitely seeing more of our partners coming to us and asking, how can we engage on the corporate side with learning and development and HR and leadership and really try to show who we are and make some of those relationships happen and help them contribute to kind of our bottom line in terms of enrollment and otherwise. And then the third pillar here being reputation and talent. So whether that's attracting employees, attracting faculty, attracting, for fundraising or development efforts, being able to kind of convince those constituencies of your value, your place, your impact, all that sort of thing. So across these objectives, we are certainly finding more appetite and providing more ability for our partners to engage on these levels. So unified institutional story, why is it important? You see here some of the things that we'll talk about today. In the top left, we have lead capture and nurture, obviously kind of the linchpin of most marketing strategies on the platform. But there's a lot of other stuff that I think exist at the intersection of assets that you already have or should already be sharing with tactics that will help you tell that story in a really effective way. I mentioned that MBA example at the top of this conversation. Very difficult to kind of convince someone in, in 100 characters or less that your MBA really stands out. But there are these other pieces of the story, these other assets, these other people that you have that can tell a story that is uniquely yours, that no one else can tell. And that, especially for institutions that may not have, infinite budgets, all that sort of thing, using your organic, using your faculty, using some of this thought leadership that you have will help you craft a story that is more uniquely yours, is more memorable, and makes it easier to attract people that you're trying to attract, whether it's new faculty, students, corporate partnerships, etc. So a few things, around that. I think as part of the individual side of this, in terms of thought leadership, this will help elevate your institution, make it more distinct in people's minds, but it also uplifts your people. And Andy will talk a little bit more about that later, both in terms of kind of organically what you're sharing, but also in terms of faculty and the good work they're doing, all those parts of the institution that I think, will help you craft a more interesting story. So the first thing I'll share about this, and kind of looking through a storytelling lens, we want kind of a big impact. We want a beginning to our story, right? The story needs a beginning, it needs a middle, it needs an end. So if we start looking at things through that lens, one thing that's been hugely successful and hugely impactful for higher education over the last 6 months or so has been connected TV. So we do have the ability to deliver ads on connected devices, Hulu, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, etc. And the thing with this is that whether it's on the institutional level, whether it's for a particular school, whether it's for a particular program, we allow you to deliver an ad like this, 30-second ad to exactly the same people you're talking to on LinkedIn for all your other efforts. So we are the only place where you can do this within the Campaign Manager tool, and you can do it using all the LinkedIn data, including degree, that you're used to doing in your marketing. So if you haven't talked to, reps, if you have LinkedIn reps, or your Carnegie folks, if you're connected to Carnegie, definitely talk to them about this. It's been hugely effective. It's had a huge impact in terms of lead volume and lead efficiency. So that's definitely something that we're happy to see. But I'm personally happy that after kind of years of talking about awareness and why it matters and why it makes sense and the impact it has on the entire funnel, we have this tactic that can deliver that. So as the beginning of the story, really, really great way to do that. Another thing we'll talk about is kind of your core content strategy on the platform. I think as an industry, higher education's organic game is really, really strong. And I think that's the thing that's most interesting to me, and I think should be to us as marketers, is that it's social. This is a kind of an obvious point, but in the marketing that we do, it tends to be relatively dry. It tends to be a headline. It tends to be, we have this program and you should apply for it. But organic, as you look to that more and more as part of your strategies, from what we're seeing, the social nature of organic content is really something that's hugely impactful. People want to hear from people. We'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of trends on the platform and how people engage with content on the platform. But if you're not kind of involving your organic folks in your overall marketing strategy or tying it to other efforts that you have, paid efforts that you have, Andy's going to go through a lot more about kind of this intersection of organic and paid. But this really, more than anything, is kind of a thumbs up. Great job to higher education for your organic content strategy as it largely exists now. But there are opportunities to amplify this and make this have more of an impact as you go. I won't touch on this for too long, because again, Andy's going to kind of dive into this a little more in a few minutes. But consider boosting your organic content, certainly. Any content that's performing well organically will likely perform really well to the constituencies that you might want to broadcast that to. So think about that, make that part of your paid strategy where it makes sense to. This stuff is social. It will tend to perform more strongly than some of the other marketing messages you might expect to. You can always add a follow button to it so that you grow your followers at the same time with the constituencies that you want. And again, it's social, which I think is a really, really kind of obvious, but well worth pointing out thing about this. So before we get into more about individual thought leadership on the platform, I wanted to share this just to kind of set the stage in terms of how content engagement is happening on LinkedIn. So as marketers, we know that having a follower base, giving them regular organic content is important. Where it makes sense to, where we have goals that we want to meet, we want to sponsor that content, we want to boost that content. That said, in terms of the distribution of engagements on the platform, that's about 10% of the engagement on the platform. So the vast majority on the right here is happening in terms of employee and influencer engagement. So it's important to kind of tell your story, to have your authentic story out there, to kind of play in this realm, but it also gives you access to a lot more in terms of engagement, a lot more play, a lot more visibility, and a lot more trust. People want to hear from people on LinkedIn. The more that we can make that part of what you're doing and amplify those voices who are already doing it, the more reach and engagement you're going to get. So this is, if I had to point to kind of one theme of this whole conversation, I think this would probably be it. We're absolutely seeing a rise in faculty and employee thought leadership on the platform. And I think of quickly growing recognition that having these voices, whether they're deans, presidents, whether they're faculty, faculty talking about their research or what's going on in their programs or what they taught about that day or a conference they attended. We would absolutely recommend that you encourage people to do this. Keep an eye on what your employees are posting. If you see good content coming through there, consider working with them and talking about, encouraging them to post more often, or maybe there's a particular theme coming up that you want to reinforce, you can share that. But any of that activity that you're seeing from employees, from faculty, it will help you in terms of telling your story to amplify those voices. It will also help them to kind of grow their followership on the platform. That's something that, as a platform, we're putting a lot of effort behind. Increasing individual visibility, followers, that sort of thing. So again, a more compelling human, more social story to tell. And from a marketing perspective, why this is meaningful is thought leader ads in terms of paid marketing objectives. So at this point, anyone really can sponsor with permission anyone's post, faculty, leadership, alumni, others. We talked a little bit about corporate partnerships. If you have a really successful corporate partnership and there's some testimony as far as that goes, you can sponsor that. Enrollment, reputation, government relations, corporate partnerships, employment brand, all these things can be really well served by people hearing from people who are the face of the institution, people who are doing the work at your institution. There's really no better way to show the impact and the value of what they're doing. So again, in our work with Carnegie, we're constantly coming with beta opportunities, new innovative things, consulting on organic strategy, talking about these sorts of opportunities and how we really make them effective. So again, if you're working with Carnegie or you're not working with Carnegie, reach out because they have a lot of expertise about this, and we work very closely with them on these sorts of things. In terms of inspiration, there's lots of examples on the platform, but we would point to these three as some examples of folks to follow and folks to look at within the realm of education to see how they're doing it. No lack of examples here to point to, but these are three that are particularly strong that I would take a look at if you haven't already. And we'll talk a little bit about some organic and paid opportunities around thought leadership that come both from the individual point of view and also kind of the academic, the institutional point of view. Thought leadership on the platform, as represented by articles authored by individuals and pages, has grown by almost 300% over the last year. Again, as a platform, we're trying to incentivize this. The click-through rates tend to be almost two times what they are to articles pointing off platform. So under the umbrella of, you probably have assets that you're not using, or if you do have assets that come out from the thought leadership perspective, if the dean is sharing something or a president is sharing something, consider putting that on LinkedIn. And also as individuals, if they want to publish something, consider posting it on LinkedIn. And then from a paid marketing perspective, you can gate this content with a pre-filled lead gen form, on-platform lead gen form that'll pop up in the feed to capture their information exchange for access to the article. So again, whether it's personal, whether it's institutional, and especially if you have content that's living elsewhere that you're looking to distribute and or gate, this can be a really powerful way to do it. Again, attached to institutional thought leadership as well as individual thought leadership for those people at your institution that you want to uplift. Similarly, and kind of connected to this is our newsletter offering, which has been a huge success. And I think there's a ton of partners that we worked with that have been very pleasantly surprised at kind of the uptick in subscribers, just the engagement with it, how quickly they're growing. We have a lot of partners who have multiple newsletters now that are on multiple topics or kind of addressing multiple constituencies. And again, from a kind of a paid marketing perspective, we would absolutely recommend that you do this from an organic perspective. And I think this will have a tremendous impact organically. But we can also help your content, help your unique story, get a little more play by putting some paid budget behind it to, say, grow subscribers for that amongst the people you care about most. So if it is about a particular, it could be, University of Phoenix, for example, has a newsletter on the platform, I believe, called Careering with Confidence. So, that kind of tone of it is about people who maybe have some trepidation about how they get in their head in their career, whether they have the skills to do that, et cetera, et cetera. University of Phoenix obviously is kind of positioning themselves as being helpful to those people. So that kind of topic and that kind of thought leadership can be great to show them that it is that kind of institution that's interested in their particular kind of career, and really grow that interest and work well with the enrollment stuff that they're doing on the platform. And just a little bit more from me here, and then Andy will take over. But in terms of this storytelling path, we want to have a beginning, we want to have a middle, and we certainly want to have an end. And I would encourage everyone to kind of think about this in the lens of, as I mentioned, having a discrete point of engagement that's one point of lead capture for whatever objective. That's a really tough thing, and that's a really tough thing to get people's attention. It's a really tough thing to actually get them to take the ultimate action you want them to take. So I would recommend, and we're seeing a lot of success, and there's a lot more folks doing it, taking your leads, whether they're for workforce partnerships, enrollment, whatever the goal is, and uploading them and using that as a means to get them to where you want them to go. In terms of enrollment, it's uploading your leads and saying apply now and pushing them directly to the application page where they can start that. There's a lot of competition. You want your story to have every chance it can to get out there and reach people. So consider these sorts of things too, again, across objectives, but a great way to tell your story and to kind of finish your story in a big way. So Andy, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about organic and paid.
So let's talk here now about one of my personal favorite subjects, and we'd be remiss not to announce the day before Halloween. And I just wrote a post actually about what a social media manager haunted house would be. And the way that I think about it is my background is kind of in that OG social media manager, 2010s. You do a little bit of everything, and a haunted house is trying to do everything at once. So it leads me to my next slide when we're talking about organic and paid media content. The good thing about current times in 2024 is that we don't necessarily see organic and paid content a lot of times coming from the same person, but now we're trying to blend these teams and find the right intersection. So on the next slide, it's one that I would really like to highlight, because as we think about going forward on LinkedIn, do we want to do organic? Do we want to do paid? Do we put more emphasis into one? Like, kind of like, what is that right chessboard? And, again, my background was really coming from doing it all at once, which, is not the easiest thing or probably the best way to do things, trying to do it all at once. But the good thing is now, we have the different teams. We see this cross intersection of products and how they all play together nicely on LinkedIn. And really, I want you to think about organic and paid together, but think about it strategically together. So on the next slide, we highlight this intersection right here when you should boost organic content with paid media. So the way that I like to think about these both pieces of content, as we click through the slide, and there's some animations that should still pop up here, is that on these, we think about it as promoted, not promoted. You see promoted as a marketer. I see promoted as a marketer. But our users, they just see content that they're engaging with. And we need to always remember that when you're posting content on LinkedIn, you're posting content that is around someone announcing a new job, someone's doing a vertical video about their workday, somebody's posting a blog, there is a newsletter. And while we think about ads, if you will, being in this competitor space or similar competitor set, everything can be a competitor when it comes to LinkedIn. You're vying for attention on the feed. So the way you see organic content will generally be your followers, your most trusted people that have decided that your school, your brand is one they want to follow and one they want to engage with on a regular basis. It's a very low percentage of pages that are followed by users when they just see a large a large amount of content. It could be prospective students, could be current students, it could be faculty, it could be a little mixture of everything. So you think about organic content generally is a wide variation of pieces that you're putting out there, whereas paid content generally is going to be your prospective students, enroll, brochures, what Tim talked about today, getting out there in front of our audiences several different times and being with them in their journey. So the way I think about fluctuating content from both sectors is I want to try to find some sort of middle ground that would be both interesting and kind of your expertise, your original content, your percentages, your research, type of content that could be interesting to those followers you have already and could be interesting to those prospective students? Or does there need to be some light alteration towards the organic content, but it's the same offer, the same ebook, the same website, the same celebration? Put that in that middle sector right there. Within your LinkedIn tools, you can boost any organic posts into an already on campaign. So I think sometimes our hesitancy is that, we got a lot of campaigns, we don't want to launch net new. I would focus on having those seasonal or always on campaigns, knowing your topics that you have in paid that are your common go-tos, and knowing when those topics intersect with your organic content, because then there's a natural flow. So you'll see the percentages on here. You don't need to memorize these, but they're good ones to follow up on when we send this deck. 61% of organic audiences are ripe to be converted with paid media. So page followers exposed to organic and paid media, they're 61% more likely to take some sort of paid action. The general philosophy or human side behind this is just the fact that it takes a while to get an enrollment. And if you are in that consideration set of someone that's picked 3, 4, 5 different schools they may attend one day, now they're looking at your organic content. That paid content, maybe you need to boost it and ensure they're seeing it more and more. This could also lift those conversions by 14%. And then also you'll see here a downward approach of 12%. Unlike a paid only strategy, organic and paid media can be converted up at a lower of 12% cost per conversion. So simply saying that over the course of time, it should likely bring your conversion cost down. Final part to click in on the slide right here is the most important key to all of it as we click through, and that is consistency is key. So do what is right for your team. If you have the capacity to boost, let's say 1 to 2 posts per week, and that fits within your budget, do 1 to 2 per week. You find one that works really well, that could become your always on paid content. Maybe there's some sort of post that you put out there as a trial, it engaged, it's a new piece, it's a new offering, it's new research. Now we've identified that, hey, it's trendy on organic with our top followers. It's worked well once we moved it to paid media. Maybe now we start to scale that. See this as kind of a fluctuation point, your testing ground, and ways to explore how organic can be paid. On our next slide, we've already hit on these items already within your Venn diagram there, but these are good reminders of what we should be doing when it comes to paid content. So expanding your reach, number one. Number two, we'll be talking about targeting specific audiences, maximizing your efforts on 3, driving conversion, robust metrics. And then if you have any questions when it comes to tracking this is the age-old question, and there's no exact 100% right, 100% wrong way to track this type of strategy, but I do have some advice on how I would do it. So that could always be something too that we discuss in our Q&A section. On our next slide, boosting can offer you just greater control over your content. So a lot of times, what is the biggest stopper of us putting paid content into our mix? We don't know if it'll work. We have to report back on CPL. We have to report back on conversion costs. Like, what is it going to do? Do I want to ruffle those feathers? Again, think of testing organic and paid in a strategic effort that makes sense for you. Now, let's say you have an always on campaign that has 3, 4 different creatives running. You could fluctuate one organic creative into those 3 and 4, see how it does versus your other ads. Maybe it'll perform better, maybe it won't, but if you already have a constant of something that's working, that could be something that helps you really solidify not losing any types of costs, metrics, downward leads, anything like that. So we see on here controlling the who, the when, the many. All this is up to you. Again, it's not an exact science, but I think the most important note I want to talk about when it comes to aligning these two different strategies is Tim and I have seen a lot of EDU accounts. I've seen accounts across several different verticals. And the biggest break we see sometimes is the organic content and the paid content are being done by two different people or two different teams, and they just aren't working together. So I know it's a little bit of a ha or maybe like a duh moment, but it's just always a reminder, have these things working together, because by the numbers that we're seeing from the insights that we've seen from a macro scale, them working together should over the course of time enhance your strategy. Last slide when it comes to our organic and paid. Again, measurement has its benefits right here. So we'll talk a little bit again at the end. If there's anything you're looking in terms of how should I be measuring my organic to paid approach, where should I be putting it, things like that. It's never kind of your A to B answer. It could be different based on the goals you're trying to achieve. Going to switch gears on our next slide, we're going to talk about the creative principles now of LinkedIn over the next 10 minutes. And this is basically your kind of best in class, what everybody should be doing, things we're seeing. But no, these slides are very new and have been data backed over the last 2+ years. So while we see creative best practices changing quite a bit, if you work in digital, you know you have it down right now, and 6 months later, something might change. It is always an evolving sphere. Note what we're seeing today is the latest, greatest, and easiest way, in my opinion, for your metrics to take a quick rise. Our next slide will talk about the top hashtags in all of LinkedIn. So when you see these, first question I usually get is, Andy, should I be putting hashtags all over my posts? And the answer is if they make sense. But I want to look at this slide from a different lens. Top 1% of hashtags that members engage with do hit on a lot of the topics we see in EDU. Look, healthcare, digital marketing, education, technology, AI, cybersecurity, growth, careers. All of these topics are topics you talk about right now, whether it be on your website, your ads, admissions, sales notes, like all of this is really fits in. So what it's telling us, again, don't feel like you have to over hashtag or force hashtags in. It just simply means that talking about these subject matters directly in your ads and your posts will more than likely hike up your engagement. I usually say with LinkedIn, don't go for mystery, go for transparency. These types of subjects are in the top 1% of what our users are interested in, so double down on them. Our next slide is probably the most important one I have for you today. Question I get the most on our team talks about, these new styles of resolutions, vertical videos, kind of the in formats we see across all of digital right now. Should I be doing that on LinkedIn? And the answer is a resounding yes. Over the course of 2023, we did some research to figure out what is engaging and also driving the most clicks when it comes to formats. We found that vertical, when it comes to paid ads specifically, is booming at a significantly higher rate than our traditional horizontal formats. If you've worked with LinkedIn for quite a while, you know all about the 1200 by 628s. You'll see that square in the middle, or 1080 by 1080 is a common resolution we see. That is going to be a both mobile and desktop format. So my ask with creative teams is usually to build around both of these formats you see on the left and the right, both vertical and square. Your vertical will be mobile only. Your square will be mobile and desktop. So see this as designing one project file and then building that project file out to be able to facilitate an ad that is exactly the same on square and then the exact same ad on vertical, and that could be your 1A, 1B. I would rather be following these types of practices versus throwing out a bunch of different ads that aren't as related to each other within your campaign. So think about doing that twice. I know it's very difficult if you don't design for vertical to reverse engineer that later on. So try to get ahead of it. If you're not doing it right now, you don't got to blow up your campaigns and reverse engineer, but I would say for the future, that's what I would be pushing towards. On our next slide, we don't have to talk about video anymore. I feel like we all know that we're, just social media folks, digital media folks living in a video world. I mean, you go to your LinkedIn feed today compared to what it was 2 or 3 years ago, a lot more movement, a lot more people talking on their cameras, a lot more EDU advertisers mixing and matching with some hip video. And the reason we're seeing it in the EDU space is this study showcased that it is 2 times more likely for a prospective student to enroll in a school after they've seen video content versus not seeing video content. So, Andy, how was this tracked? What it was done is through a macro lens where if a user was targeted, they see your video, and then at some point in their trajectory, whether it be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the road, that they now mark that they're enrolled in your school. So what we really see this as, really lends Tim's point, is the multitude of touch points. Video allows you to be able to showcase that video a significantly higher amount of times traditionally with some of our ad formats, such as brand awareness, video views. Then it allows you to retarget directly off of those, which is on my next slide. And when we retarget, we're able to do that with 25, 50, 75, or 97% view through rates. This gives you a lot more flexibility to show people content over the course of time and really hone in on where they might be at in your funnel. So if you're matching messaging across, maybe it starts broad, it gets narrow, that consistency and the prospective student seeing you a multitude of times in different ways can be helpful. I challenge you for some homework after today's discussion to go home and go through your LinkedIn feed and think about how many times you find an ad interesting, or you stop the scroll, you read, you look, but you don't click or engage. Prior towards using LinkedIn video retargeting, a lot of retargeting strategy is solely used if somebody clicks, but a click is not always indicative of someone who could be interested in joining your journey. In fact, I think sometimes when I sit through a minute video, 45-second video, I'm actually a little more interested when I watch one all the way through versus sometimes when I just rage click on something. So I'm not saying to retarget off both. I think both are important, but I do want to give you more chances for success, and that starts with using video. A couple of examples to round us out. An illustration here, Arizona State University. We'll look here on the left. As you see, there is no sound. We do this on purpose because 80% of our users will watch a video without sound. What ASU does here is there's no green screens, there's no actors, there's no actresses, there's no bells and whistles. It's a nice, solid, animated video where they're showing their large brand. They have several programs. They're #1 in the US for innovation. It's quick, it's punchy, it's to the point, and you don't necessarily wait for like a build-up like on traditional TV. So when somebody is targeted with this and they're a potential prospective student, they don't know why they're targeted with ads, but they may just, watch it and be like, hey, yeah, for whatever reason, I've been in the market for, greater higher education. And they see this popping up, whether it be on their desktop, their mobile, it's following them around a little bit. And then boom, one day here on the right, they're hit with these more specific ads. Doctor of Behavioral Health Online, Applied Leadership and Management, earn your master's in architecture, MS in digital audience strategy. These ads and programs couldn't be any more different from each other in terms of what programs they are, but look at the branding. It stays very consistent as it goes into a more honed in specific ask, but consistent with starting with a brand ad. So this allows campaign managers to be able to start with that broad audience, build their retargeting, and finesse it to be program specific. And I would say most importantly, not having to break the bank on video, which I think is one of the biggest stoppers for a lot of us on our video journey. And then on our last slide, looking at eCornell. This is one of my favorites just to show you that video can be whatever you make it. So eCornell with the bear literally popping out of the screen. They created their own Enroll Now button, and they're actually using this for down funnel motions to try to get someone to enroll. So if you're looking for a little bit of flexibility within your ads and you're running those enroll ads deep down the funnel, you're trying to close that user journey, no, video can still be a tool for you. You could utilize this with a conversion goal, and you can still retarget the people that watch this. Maybe they watch this video 6 different times, but we're half paying attention. It's the 7th time that gets them in. So know that you can continue to keep that retargeting journey going, stay on top of their mind. And when we think video, it can be animation, it can be GIF style. You can still go with more of a produced video if you like, and that's something that I would say talk to your reps. It's something I work with a lot of partners on, how to take professional video, how to make it a little bit more hip LinkedIn video for 2024. So there are ways to go about that. But I want to take us to our Q&A here, Tim. So I know that we hit on several different things all at once. So we need to definitely give us some time to review what some of, the burning questions are. And, I think, Tim, as we look in this creative journey, one thing I want to say is just be sure to reach out. If you have a designated LinkedIn rep, be sure to reach out to them, because some of this content's just really tip of the iceberg, and we can get into much more honed in strategy from that point.
Thank you both. That eCornell video is amazing. The bear coming out of the screen. I love that. Never seen anything like that before. We do have 2 questions. Actually, there's a third just came in. So
Great.
first one is, what is your recommendation for engaging with employee and influencer posts as the institution? What's the best practice?
Andy, you want to take that? You want me to?
Yeah. I would say designate who you're willing to comment, like, share. A lot of companies will have different guidelines around that. Like, for instance, like an old school one is you post something, it gets 85 comments. There's a discussion with social media managers. Some say you respond to every one. So some say you hide certain ones. Some say you leave them all up, but you only respond to the good ones. Like, so it's kind of like the community relations aspect of social media can be very subjective. My recommendation is, if you are commenting from a company page, just do it strategically and have a strategy that goes through all of your marketing teams on what you'd like to say and how you'd like to be seen. But this will help you quite a bit. The strategy of doing that will show your page popping up at the top of posts saying that your school commented on X and Y. If it's like some big breaking news in the EDU space, giving your perspective on it that's approved could be powerful. So I'd say do it as needed. There isn't really a volume that we'd recommend, but I think the more you do it, the more you're going to be seen. So it's a good aid towards your paid and organic strategy.
Excellent. We have another question. I think a lot of people probably want to know this one is, what do you think the percentage of prospective students that are using LinkedIn? You're just gonna have that right off the top of your head.
Yeah. And I should. We have those stats. I mean, there's a lot of stats. This is gonna help address this specifically. There's a lot of stats we have around. And again, if you work with Carnegie, if you work with other reps, ask them for this information. We put out a lot of information on degree trends, what's hot, what's declining in terms of enrollments, because we can see by LinkedIn profile points who's enrolling where, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I would say, we get this question, and we also sometimes get this question in terms of we don't believe that nurses are really on the platform. We don't believe that teachers are really on the platform. And we do have plenty of research around those groups. But what I say is, our targeting is such that you are only targeting, for example, teachers. And these are people who are active teachers. They represent themselves on their profile. If only 100,000 teachers come to the platform, that's who we're going to reach. That's who you're going to engage with. Yeah. So any constituency you're looking for is on the platform at scale. And we can help with kind of targeting those folks. And you can get a sense of what the engagement is and how active they are and all that sort of thing that way. But there is no single constituency. And again, I've been doing this for 14 years, mostly in higher education, do it every day. There is no single program or single constituency on LinkedIn that is not effectively supportable. And we do that all the time. And if there's nuance to it and difficulty to it, and it's a real tough program to enroll, talk to Carnegie, talk to us if you have individual reps, and we can help kind of formulate that for sure.
Yeah. Another question, actually, someone saying thank you for such insightful presentation. They wanted to know, would you be willing to share examples or LinkedIn content that college admissions offices can use as inspiration for creating content specifically designed for engaging prospective students or school counselors?
When it comes to admissions messaging, that is something I will do workshops with schools, agencies, different partners that work across the sphere. One of the things that I focus on heavily, and I ensure we dive deep into this, is I want to ensure admissions messaging is matched with your paid ads. So what my goal is, if someone clicks learn more, fills out a form, is going to take some sort of action, I would rather answer the admissions questions in that ad before they actually talk to admissions. Now, it doesn't mean they won't have any follow-ups. I mean, we're making a big life decision, so there's going to be plenty of questions to be had. But if I can take those top questions that are coming through admissions, and this is something that we talk about all the time, percentages, whatever that might be in your original research, I want to put that in the ad. So that is something we work on. There's a bundle of ads that do talk about that. They could all be a little nuanced, or I could be used in a lot of different ways, but there's certainly banks of examples we have where that's done. So I would always say, feel free to ever message me on LinkedIn too. Like, I'll send you some links. Yeah, here, this is what I'm talking about, because there's so much assets that we have at our disposal. It's almost overwhelming which ones to choose. So we have plenty that we can kind of go off.
Got you.
I think the motion is the important thing too, as
Mhm.
well. Like those things have been siloed, whether it's organic and paid or whether it's admissions and marketing. Like just trying to break down those silos and have those conversations, I think is a lot of it. What are you doing? And as Andy said, I think that's super. And I'm sorry, I'll just take 30 seconds to say what Andy said
Yep.
is like, from a content perspective, we're talking all the time. Like, again, going back to the MBA, we basically have the same headline 4 times for the MBA, right? And then we're expecting everyone to get to the brochure, the landing page, and get all the nuance. Let's not do that, because we're talking about that all day long. Take those 4 or 5 proof points, those objections, put them in your content right up front. You're going to get better leads who have more idea what they're doing. So just underlining that from Andy, the more information that you can get people in any opportunity, whether they click or not at the moment, all the better.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We have a couple more. Someone from a business school, they said, we're a business school. Would it be best for us to create our own business page rather than be connected to the larger school in order to see our alumni? Or are these options still available for us if we have a parent page?
Yeah, those are good questions. And I think, the questions within the question are the right questions to ask in terms of how you want to kind of separate out your real estate. We definitely, I would say 9 times out of 10, recommend against, lost my earbud. Recommend against kind of parsing things out so every program has a page, for example. But at the business school level, you do have the kind of the friction of everyone rolling up to the main page, and then if you build out a new page, there is a little bit of friction around that. But I would look at it in terms of like, how do you want to position your messaging? Does it help to have the business school be the one sending that message about the MBA? I would say in most cases it does. I don't think it's kind of a fatal thing either way, but for that kind of use case specifically, business school versus overall institution, I would probably suggest that in most cases, because you're also probably talking to a subset within the business school. Is probably more focused on grad and things like that than the main pages, less about the institutional reputation and that sort of thing. So short answer is yes, but again, we or Carnegie are happy to consult on an individual basis before you make any changes.
I always say when it comes to making more pages, make judgment calls on your staffing, because you open a whole new page. I was talking about the social media haunted house. So in the early days, the one thing we all learned is that we would run like a corporate page, for instance, like, hey, let's do 15 other regional pages, but the same person is managing all of them. And what it does is it splits your attention so many times that you're not able to keep the frequency up as high on one. So I think there's a real case when it comes to a business school because you're trying to identify a separate brand, maybe from like the main university, and not be seen as just like undergrad, for instance. So I think there's a legitimate case for the split out, but make sure that you're analyzing your internal resources and everybody feels comfortable with doing that, that they not only can launch a new page, but they can master it, like hit your best practices of posting a handful of times a week, having things like videos, being able to do organic and paid. If you can check all those boxes, that's where I would start, just ensuring you have that capacity.
Mm-hmm. We have our last two questions. One, just someone want a clarification. They asked to clarify, were the vertical video KPI improvements in addition to horizontal, or were the vertical formats the only creatives used?
So the vertical, square, horizontal, the way that I worked with Insights on this when I knew they were developing it is just solely they're taking the resolutions of all campaigns and evaluating the CTRs and engagement rates on them. So just imagine every vertical, every asset that exists on LinkedIn, they basically pulled them by which types of resolution they were and then pulled the engagement rate and CTR. So they really, when you look at the campaigns, sometimes people will run campaigns with only vertical videos. Sometimes they'll run like 3 versions: a vertical, a horizontal, a square. But the CTRs and engagement rates were isolated from that. They were just purely off of each ad unit itself and then brought out to like an overall aggregate.
Okay. And last but not least, Amy, she wanted to know, do you believe there's a larger percentage of students searching for graduate programs versus undergraduate programs?
In terms of traditional quote unquote undergraduate, yes. And we do a decent amount of work in terms of kind of parents undergrads and influence on that process. But for the most part, it would be kind of more traditional grad program certification, executive education, as well as kind of bachelor's degrees for working professionals. That's a huge part of what we do, and I don't want to kind of undercut that because it's a massive part of what we do is working professionals and getting them into the right degree program or certificate or whatever. So anyone in their career, early stage to certainly senior stage, we support that a ton.
Yeah, I'd say, make a judgment call too on what your goals are, whether it be undergrad and graduate. I can tell you from prior to working at LinkedIn, the reason why in my agency life we would put more paid advertising towards graduate schools is simply because there is typically more openings that we needed to fill. A lot of the large undergrad colleges would tell us we have no problems filling our classrooms. We want you to do more like brand awareness plays, just to like spread the word and initiatives that they're doing. But that wasn't always the case. I worked with some undergraduate programs as well that needed their classrooms to be more full. But I would say when you are on LinkedIn, you're getting retargeted with stuff, you'll probably be getting retargeted more. First off, because you're in your career. So they're going to think you're more eligible for like an MBA program. We're all professionals, so we're right in that range where you might get hit with something. But the undergrad ads, sometimes it just varies by school how heavy they go with it or not. But I think all of us, when it comes to more of those masters, business programs, EMBAs, nursing, etc., we're trying to still fill those classrooms. So that's where I see that become more widespread on LinkedIn because we're always trying to stay ahead of that, next cohort starting.
Yeah. Well, by the show of the number of questions that we had, this is definitely a hot topic, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us for this session this afternoon, and certainly an enormous thank you to both Tim and Andy from LinkedIn for their time. Folks, if you're interested in connecting with Carnegie on your digital strategy, you can use this QR code to sign up for a digital strategy consultation. And our team will be in contact with you. As a special promotion, for those that have joined the Connection Digital session today, we're offering a 25% discount on a Google Analytics audit or brand lift study. So definitely take a peek at that by using the QR code. And again, everyone knows this. If not, Carnegie, we certainly are a leader in higher education digital advertising, and we're honored to be able to support colleges and universities and with their advertising efforts, and to be able to provide free resources like today's session. So we're very excited to be able to host these type of events. Be sure to check out the rest of the agenda for today and tomorrow. If you have any questions or need any help with anything, please email conferences at carnegiehighered.com or message us through the Ask Organizers Anything section of the community board and Hula. Next up at looks like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, sorry, is our session, The Graduate Enrollment Management Landscape, a NAGAP discussion. So it'll be some folks that are part of NAGAP. But again, thank you, Andy and Tim, for your time today. Thank you all for sticking around, and have a great rest of your day and the rest of the conference. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.